What's up, everybody? This is Rob Shack. So today we're going to be doing the next video in my Rivals series in Gran Turismo 3. We are going to be comparing the F686M to the, where is it? I think it's the F094S, I believe. What I want to do is compare a 90s Formula 1 to an 80s one. And I'm just picking the best two of each one because I figured that'd be the good way to do it. So be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and share. Help me get to 1,000 subs. If you're new to the channel and you're new to what I'm doing here in this series, what I do is I pick 2 to 3 cars, rival them, drive around complex string, and then I do a race where the AI are together on it, watch them race a little bit, and then do a max speed test to end the video. So hope y'all enjoy the video. I'll put timestamps below where you can see all this stuff, and it's pretty fun. So we're starting with the F686M, definitely one of the best cars in the Formula 1 department. Very fast, very incredibly quick. Lot of turbo lag though, so you'll notice this with this car compared to the 90s ones. This car, when it gets near its higher RPMs, can freaking fly, but when it downshifts, it slows down pretty substantially, honestly. You can see that even with the low even with the low parts of gears, it does the same thing. Handling wise, it's going to be a little bit worse just because it's an 80s Formula 1 race car versus a 90s one. The technology was just not as good, so you'll kind of notice a little bit of a delay in the steering and stuff like that. It sounds way cooler. I like the way the 80s ones sound. It's just, they sound so menacing. The 90s ones are just kind of like a high-pitched, which is, I mean, it's accurate, but the high-pitched is nice, but it's just not quite my favorite personally. But in terms of the sound, yeah, so that's why I would give that to the 80s one. But I do think that the 90s ones are overall better. It's just you can make do with the 80s one if the courses you race on have enough of a top speed area for you to catch up. But like tight technical corners, you would probably be better using one of the F9s or F09 somethings, F094, F090, F094H/S, or all those ones. There's all the 90s ones are better for handling areas. Like these corners, you'll see I do way better with the, unless I mess up because I'm talking while I do this. But the F09s are really good at handling and on corners. They are also a little bit better at distributing power. You'll notice that when they don't have the lag of being in the lower part of the RPMs, they don't struggle as much as the F68s. These cars are just more for the upper RPMs. They just go flying at the upper RPMs. You can like see it. I mean, it's pretty crazy how noticeable it is. And it's obviously because these cars are so fast that it's so dramatic that you can tell. Normally, you can't really tell unless you're like in the top gear. But even in second gear, third gear, fourth gear, these cars are very noticeably dealing with that turbo lag that you see. If I would just get on the road here, that would be nice to prove my point. But maybe it'll just have to wait until after I get through these parts. Again, the technical parts, the F6s are going to struggle a lot because of the fact that the handling is just not quite as good as the F09s. But still good. I'm not saying they're bad. Again, I'm not saying they're bad. Every car, when I talk about these rival series, these cars are obviously very similar. That's why I pick cars that are very similar. That's the whole point. Obviously, you can compare this car to a Mini Cooper and it's going to be better in every way. But I'm talking about just specifically with the other Formula 1 cars and kind of in the area where it's supposed to be compared. This is the fastest F6 version. And then there's the F09s are the fastest ones. I'm going to compare those. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about here. So the car is good. The car still does these things well. It still is better than most cars in the game. You can argue that the R390 and the 787B can, handle a little bit better than this car sometimes and stuff like that. But yeah, it's really hard to push the F6 compared to the F09s. Also, I'm getting used to the way the car drives, so that might also be part of the reason why I'm going a little bit all over the place. But yeah, that's just kind of where I'm coming from with these cars. Is you'll notice that with the F6s, if you have a lot of, I think in the Formula 1 races, you have a lot of courses that are not very technical. You have a lot of long straights. So you can probably pull off using the F6s versus the F09s. But like, yeah, if you like race on, if every race was like Côte d'Azur in this game, you would probably struggle a lot because that course is like super technical. and so the F6s would be a little bit would struggle a lot more. But again, you notice how fast this car is. Once it starts to get past a certain RPM, it just kind of accelerates and accelerates and accelerates until it shifts down to the next gear, and I find that really interesting. So I did a 353. That's not as good as I thought it was going to be. Although obviously I'm kind of figuring out these cars as we go here, but yeah, the F6s definitely struggle a little bit more on the corners. You don't, a lot of times you feel like you can just kind of take the car super quick through the corners, but this car, it definitely has a little bit of a lag and it struggles a lot more on the corners. And you can tell that, like, even when I was doing it well, it's just, it has a weird way to spin. It has a weird way of steering. It's almost, I mean, it is literally a Formula One race car. So big wheels, you're gonna have lots of steering. It's going to be a little bit delayed, and it's going to be really intense once it starts going. So once you figure that out, you'll be fine. But it's just, you have to get used to the driving of Formula One in this game. They're accurate, and they're not like other cars. So now we're going to switch over to the F094, and I'll show some of that gameplay as well. All right, now we are on to the F094S. This is a very, very good car. Both this and the H are really good. Let me see if I need to get the oil changed really quickly. I think I could literally use either one of them and it would be fine. But both these cars are really good. Very pretty looking cars. Lots of good vinyl on there. A lot of good liveries on there. I don't remember what they're based on, so let me know in the comments what these cars are based on. I know they're like actual Formula One race cars, and the F, it stands for Formula One. The F09 means it's 94, or wait, I can't remember exactly what I think it might be the engine specs where it's F686 something and then F09 something. I think that's the engine, and then obviously 94 is the date, 86, 88, 91, 94, 90, all that stuff. And then the H and the S and the M is the driver's name. I know that, but I don't remember what they all are. So yeah, definitely let me know in the comments because I'm curious. What are these cars? What do their names represent? I'm very curious. So now we are on to the F094S. This is like the newest Formula One race car in the game. Tell right away, power is very even as it shifts. It doesn't have that lag, the same lag that you see with the F6s. That is one of those things where certain courses will definitely benefit the F6, and certain courses will definitely benefit the F09s. But yeah, I'm noticing right away. I just drove off the road there, but I was killing it before. So yeah, the handling on these cars is very noticeable. The car doesn't really get uneven very much, like at all. It stays very, I mean, all the Formula Ones are very gripped, but I'm noticing a lot more grip with the F094 versus the F686M. Now granted, the F686 is the oldest one. There's an 8.8 and an 8.7 in this game, but still, I mean, there's not going to be much of a difference between those three cars, but when you go to an F094, that's going to be a lot of years to improve. So I'm very intrigued by this car. It sounds great. I mean, obviously, I like the sound of the older Formula Ones more. I like the lower pitch. I think that's just kind of cooler to me personally. I think the power is way more efficient on the F09s. There's not a lot of turbo lag. I know I just said that, but I'm like, it's so noticeable. I mean, look at how when you hit that low RPM right when you downshift, there is like barely any difference compared to what it is by the time it's about to upshift. Or when you hit when you're about to hit your next gear, it's like it's pretty consistent compared to the slow increase in acceleration when you downshift right away to you go so much faster when you oh, I just spun out. Okay, well that's a bummer. Anyway, don't blame that on the car. That's me. I'm just talking while I drive, so there's a little bit of a multitask situation here. But yeah, I'm noticing that with the F686, once you start to downshift, once you hit the low RPM, your car will noticeably be going slower before when you're at a higher RPM, and this car is way more even as the F094. I still just struggle driving these weird sweeping figure 8 type turns with every car. It's hard to drive these corners, but again, I'm going so much faster with the F094s. It's just made for this type of stuff. The handling is a lot better. You don't kind of feel the car getting unstable as fast like with the F686. These cars are way more gripped. I do notice that the power is lower on the 90s ones, and I think that's because of the fact that it's a different engine. It's a slightly weaker engine that has a more efficient power, so that's why the power is still very high, but the horsepower is more on the F6s versus the F09s. So I think that's going to be something that's interesting. Obviously, when you get to like a test course, you're going to kill the slower ones with the faster car. With the F09s are going to lose on the straight line, but that's kind of what I mean. Formula One races are on technical corners as well, so you're going to be winning a lot with the F094s on like a Côte d'Azur, but you will probably lose if you race against the F686 on test course, just because of how fast the F686 is, and the F687 too. All of them are very fast. It's just they need to get up to that power, and once they get up there, there's like no stopping them. But with the F094s, they kind of are geared, and the engine is designed to basically last where it's just going to get up to about 200 horsepower, and then that's going to be kind of it. It's not going to get much faster than that. It slows down just like the F686 does once you hit that 6th gear, but before that point, it's very noticeable that the acceleration consistency is way better with the F094H and S. Noticing that, I got a 347 there, and I spun out. I spun out on that one corner, and I still beat the F686 by like 7 seconds there. So that kind of puts it into perspective. You know, obviously I'm not the best driver, and I'm talking while I do this because I like to be multitasking. It shows. I think it makes me. I don't know. It makes it feel authentic. You know, I'm not recording over a past replay as often. I still do that sometimes, but obviously, you do what you want to do. But yeah, I spun out, and I still had a way better lap there, so that's pretty hilarious. I'm pretty impressed with the F094S. I definitely, in my playthrough, I went with the F686M because of the fact that its power was so good. But I just find it really interesting that they kind of put 2 classes in there. I liked that they did that. It made it really interesting to me. It allowed for a little bit more of a dynamic gameplay. And again, that's why I like the way they made this game. Even though the games are, there's not a lot of cars in Gran Turismo 3, they set it up well by having kind of like these little mini rivalries between cars. And that's why I make these videos. It's all about showing that little, how they do it. So it's fun. Now I'm going to move on to a race with the F094S and the F686M in it, and we'll kind of see how they do. Alrighty then. So here we are. We have the F686M and the F094H in the same race here. It's a good race. You'll see kind of what happens here. I had a good time with this one. Unfortunately, with this race, the F686M just kind of gets bullied by a few people. So there's kind of a little bit of a, take this replay with a grain of salt here. The F686 was starting in 3rd, but then kind of sucked a little bit. And so that was kind of a bummer for him. But still a pretty good race. F094S definitely handles it on the straights like a boss. I mean, that's just no brainer at all. We have a few other F6s in this race, and there's some F09s in here as well. And so I was doing terrible, so I didn't really care how I played. I have to get used to the how the Formula Ones steer, because they steer so intensely. It's pretty great. But yeah, you'll notice that the F686M AI didn't seem to do very well. Like, I'm pretty good with the F686M, but it seems like the AI struggle with it a lot because they like went off the road a lot more than I was expecting, and that kind of messed up their race to the point that I don't even know which one I was fighting with, but I ended up fighting in like last with one dude for like the whole game, and it was I think it was the F090S, which is by far the worst one. The F686M does have that top speed, so I picked this course on purpose because I was like, this has a lot of really fast bits on it. So I was like, maybe the F686M can kind of like use that to his advantage a little bit. But because he kept battling people and the F094S started in 1st and never had to battle a single person, that is something to definitely consider when you're trying to compare how the AI handled these 2 cars. Because the AI don't really pass well in this game very much. Like, they tend to just not. But right now, the F686 did pull back up into 2nd. And I think that's where he spends the rest of the race. But, yeah, it's just kind of a bummer that he had to battle everybody. Because that really does, in a race like this with Formula 1 cars, it 100% matters how you're battling. If you're fighting other cars, you might as well consider yourself you're not viable for the lead anymore. And so that ends up happening a lot with races like this, where you kind of hope that they spawn right next to each other and sit like in first and second. So first and third was pretty good, but it wasn't as good as I would want, obviously. But yeah, you can tell that with the F686M, with a lot of these F6s, they have that lag where they start slow in the gear, but then they end up flying when they get to the higher parts of the gear ratios. And so when you compare, he should be able to be faster on the straightaway than the F094, who brakes at 211, and he was already at 211 when I swapped back to him. So yeah, like that stuff is very noticeable. And then the F090S is generally the worst one. Good handling, but very bad top speed, to the point that he gets passed by every other F6 very easily, or battles them very easily. And then there's me sitting there with the F687S. I didn't realize there was another one in the race. I wasn't really paying attention when I started the race. So the F686M is the second best version of the Formula Ones. I mean, maybe the F094H would also be better, but in this, generally it's the best of the old version of the Formula Ones, and the best of the new ones is the F094s. That's pretty much what you need to know, and it's going to turn into one of those things where, on certain courses, the F686M will be more of a threat, depending on how much of a top speed you get to, which is why I picked Tokyo Route 246. It seems like a good balance of technical corners, plus some big, huge straightaways where it can fly. And that's kind of where the F6 will thrive, on straightaways, and then tight technical corners, the F094 will thrive. So I found that to be interesting. Obviously, the other cars will draft on the F686M, like this F090S, which generally is not a very good car, but it's able to draft and get really close to him. But yeah, the F686M is a very interesting car in that it's so fast, but does have a noticeable weakness in its handling. It is getting slowly beaten out by the F094H. Its distance apart is getting slightly bigger as we go along. I didn't stay in this race long enough to see the pit situation, but we can kind of tell, we can gauge it when I stop the race based on how much their tire wear was, if the F094 would have better tire wear. I think generally the older ones are going to have worse tire wear, just because that would be the logical assumption, that as the handling gets better of the cars over time, that would make the tire wear better, and then obviously as tires get better, that too. But we're just talking specifically about the Formula Ones themselves. I think the F094 is generally a better car, but I think you have to keep the F686 in your mind as if you're driving against it on, say a test course race or something like that, it's going to be hard to beat. It's going to be the fastest car in the lobby on a fast course, but then on the technicals, probably not. So, yeah, it's a good race though. Good cars. The Formula One race is such an interesting idea, and I like that they brought Formula Ones into GT3. It was kind of an interesting idea to bring so many new cars in that only are available in one race. I thought that was kind of an interesting idea, and then to kind of scatter the Formula One cars all over the place. Wow, that F687 did a dive bomb and just ruined the F686M's race. So don't take that into consideration. Don't take that into consideration when you deal with the F686M. I didn't realize that even happened. I was battling the F688S forever, and I just kind of didn't really care. But wow, I did not expect the F687 to destroy the F686 there, and then also make it so that now the F090S is the one in second. So that's pretty hilarious. I think generally the tires wear very similarly, but I think generally the older ones will have a little bit more wear. I think you can kind of tell as they drive. That's kind of what happens there, but that's pretty funny that just happened. So again, don't take that into consideration with the F686M. So the next thing we'll do after this race ends is I'll do a max speed test with the F686 and the F094 and just kind of show that on a big straightaway you will get a better top speed with the older ones because of their engine and their specs and all that, but then you'll also get better acceleration with the F094. So I find that stuff to be very interesting, and now we'll kind of get to see that happen. The F686's race did totally get ruined though, which is a pretty big bummer that happened. I don't know why that happened. I don't know where the F687 came from. I don't know why he was like suddenly very adamant about that, but he did. He tried it, and it was silly. So yeah. Other than that, I think this will be a good race.
to try out. I recommend give it your own, walkthrough. See how you like the AI there, and see if anything weird happens, because that was weird, and I'm sure there are other weird things that'll happen when you do these races. So, yeah, let me know in the comments too if you've tried these races out, because these are interesting to me. I wonder if I don't think the F686 is going to catch up to him either. So that was a bottled race by the F68687. He just kind of ruined everybody's race there. It's very strange. Tire wear is interesting. It looks like the F686 actually has better tire wear than the F094S, which is kind of weird. I didn't really expect that. That's kind of strange. The F686 is sliding around the corners too. That's interesting. But yeah, like you can tell that certain cars are like their tires wear very poorly. The F687S had some pretty bad tire wear, but it kind of looks like everybody else is in the same boat. The F686M is definitely sliding on the back more, so that's going to be a problem. And then I hit him there, so that's my fault. But it's a good race. And now we're going to move on to the speed.